So you either have Sky Glass or you are thinking about it, and indeed you want to know what are the best settings you should use. Of course, that can be subjective depending on your own ambient light conditions and what content you watch, but nevertheless in this video I'll be sharing my own personal settings and also giving you an audio and a visual demo of the television. Now, in case you're wondering a little bit more about Sky Glass, want to know a little bit about the pricing for example, do check it up on your pop-up banner down description below or indeed in the pinned comments. But without further ado, let's get into this video. Now, before proceeding with my settings, I should mention how you interact with the television. And here you've got a physical remote which allows you to control the right settings, and you've even got a little plus button which gives you the ability to make a playlist and therefore save your favorite shows that you can quickly stream at any given time just through a quick menu. Elsewhere you do have a microphone button. Now, the microphone button is used there if you want to interact via voice commands. Now, as standard out the box you'll have microphone input enabled, and therefore it means that the television will pick up on your voice commands. Now, if you want to disable this and therefore don't want the television listening into you, you can disable it via a physical button found on the right hand side of the panel itself or via your Sky settings, which I'll showcase very shortly. Now, speaking of which, hello Sky, what's the weather like today? And as you can see from my voice input only, it's picked up that I want to know the weather, it's opened up the Sky Weather app and is showcasing my weather in my local area. Of course, you have to set the location for the first time. You can of course jump to certain apps. Hello Sky, open up the YouTube app. And as you see there, yet again, it's picked up my command perfectly, opened up the YouTube app, and if you were watching a video, it'll even resume as to where you just left off. I find this feature pretty cool. Of course, if you do not want to use the wake up word, you can disable it as I just mentioned, and then just use the button found on the remote to do the same sort of commands. So let's get on to my settings. As you can see over here, you've got the home screen and you've got a variety of different things that you can do, and this really depends in terms of what you are actually subscribed to via Sky's packages. You've got the TV guide and then you've got the playlist that I was referencing before. So for example, I had the Formula 1 that was saved over here by just pressing the plus button. Then you've got a bunch of different apps that are built in, which are the providers that are working with Sky at the moment, which is nice to see. And then you've got a variety of different things, which is of course based on what you are subscribed to when it comes to Sky. As you can see over here, I've got pretty much everything, and you've even got some games that you can play, which I find quite intriguing. Now let's get on to my settings, which you can see over here. It's right at the bottom, and then you've got a bunch of different tabs on the left. First off, we're going to talk about picture and sound. Now, first off, we've got the viewing mode. Now, the viewing mode can be customized. So, for example, you can change it over here, and it's going to alter the picture settings. You've got the auto mode, which basically tries to assess as to what is best in terms of the content you're watching. In my opinion, I actually quite preferred using it on custom because it allowed me to tinker around with more finite details. So, for example, over here, you've got the picture mode. Now, you've got the auto backlight adjustment, as the name might suggest. You've got the backlight itself. In my case, normally I run it at around 70, but due to the video, I've actually reduced it all the way down to 0. The aspect ratio is really depending as to what you're going to be watching. As for Dolby Vision picture mode, it's pretty self-explanatory, but in my case, I prefer to run it on the bright. And then as for default streaming format, it really depends in terms of what format you are running. So for example, Ultra HD or HD content, if you run it on auto, it will automatically switch to UHD if you have that content. And then you've got the custom settings. If we press OK on the custom settings, it will launch up some more settings that you can tinker around with. As you can see over here, I've got contrast set at 55, sharpness at 53, video brightness at 50, color saturation at 55, hue and tint I've left at as standard at 50, white balance I haven't touched, Local dimming I have enabled because it's something it has. Now here via the color space management, you've got the RGBYCM controls, and then you can go through the hue and saturation and also adjust the luminance. For me, I adjusted the luminance to 17 and left all the rest as standard. So going back over here, you can see then you've got the custom settings for the sound as well. You've got auto volume correction, which, as the name might suggest, will automatically adjust and correct the volume to make it pretty much unison as it goes. So therefore, when you're switching between apps, I don't have that enabled because I don't mind adjusting the volume. And then you've got the virtual surround sound. Now, if you want a more reference sound, I would suggest disabling this. If you want something that sounds a little bit richer and therefore provides a little bit more width and depth when it comes to watching content, I would suggest enabling this option. So now if we go back, you've then got the sounds tab. So therefore it's separated from the advanced sound tab. Now night mode is very self-explanatory and so are the other settings, but I leave these disabled because to my ears and my setup, I prefer them disabled. Now it's worth bearing in mind you have got the internal speakers, but you've also got HDMI eARC if you want to run a soundbar setup instead. If you run HDMI eARC, you will of course need something connected, and when you do so, these modes that you've got above, such as bass boost and enhanced speech quality, will be disabled because you are running on a separate configuration and therefore will have to adjust the settings on your separate device, such as the soundbar. Now for the audio language, English for me works, and as for the audio output, here I've run it on auto. You can go through pass-through or PCM stereo if you so wish, but auto seems to do a good job in this respect. And then you've got the delay which you can adjust, and as you can see you've got a variety of different milliseconds that you can add, so up to 200 milliseconds and variety of different configurations. And then yet again, if I go onto the custom settings, onto the sound tab, it will jump me back to the custom settings that we were previously at. Now moving past picture and sound, we've got network, and you can see over here I've got my network connection and it is connected. So here you can check to see if you are connected or if there's any issues whatsoever. You can quickly check it via this systems tab. The advanced settings give you your IP settings and also the device location, so therefore it makes it a little bit easier, and you can fully disable Wi-Fi also if you're going to be running on a wired connection instead. As for accessibility, this is quite useful for those people who need it. So for example, high contrast, or if you want to enable the subtitles. As for remote and devices, I'm using the Sky remote only, so that's what is connected over there. As for parental, you've got parental settings that you can enable, and here you have to enter the PIN, and in my case I have set it previously, and if you haven't, it will come up with a prompt for you to set it for the first time. And then here you can enable, let's say, PIN for purchases, or let's say add family settings, and therefore means that it gives you a little bit more peace of mind if you've got children, specifically when you've got the ratings, or let's say for pins for certain apps. So if you don't want your children to be accessing, I don't know, let's say the ITV hub, you can enable a pin for this app specifically, and therefore means that it gives you a little bit more, well, that extra peace of mind as I mentioned before. Then you've got privacy, which is the voice microphone, which you can enable or disable, and this makes it a little bit handy for you to not reach over to the television's right hand side, so therefore you can enable it directly from the settings over here. Then you've got startup and standby. Now this is quite interesting because you've got an auto standby using motion, so therefore if you were to walk away from the television, it will switch off after a little while and then switch on as well. Likewise, you've got overnight power saving mode, which is quite useful for those people who just want to save a little bit of energy. And in this respect, you've got different energy ratings depending on the television you go through. If you want some more details about that, I'll pop them down in the description below. Elsewhere, you've got network standby mode if you're not going to be using it, a sleep timer, and HDMI one-touch play. As the name might suggest, it's for HDMI connections or devices using it. Then you've got viewing preferences. As you can see, you can enable or disable autoplay. And finally, you do also have system management, which I'm not going to jump in purely because it does share some sensitive information such as your MAC address and indeed your serial number. But of course, if you're interested about that, you can check it out over there as well. Now, with my settings out of the way, you might be wondering how on earth you connect up to the television. Well, I had the question myself, and thankfully, you don't need to be running on Sky Broadband. Of course, you can have it on a package deal deal, and of course if you're a Sky Broadband customer there's going to be no problems whatsoever. But for those of us like myself who don't have Sky Broadband and are using a different ISP, you shouldn't worry. Sky Glass works seamlessly over a wired Ethernet connection or over a Wi-Fi connection. Here the Wi-Fi 6 band is supported, so therefore you've got 802.11ax, and it is of course backwards compatible. So in my case I am just not running on Wi-Fi 6 and I'm still able to connect seamlessly to the television and stream all my favorite shows or indeed TV programs. Speaking of which, if you do want to watch terrestrial TV, it is all done over the air. In other words, over the internet via Sky services, and therefore means you only need the power cable that's connected up to your wall, and that is it. Of course, if you do prefer to use an aerial input, you can do that as well, and because here there's the physical jack that can be found behind the television. Now at the back of the television you'll also find a USB Type-C input which delivers 15 watts of power. That's useful for powering, let's say, a separate dongle or a device, and then you've got 3 HDMI 2.1 inputs, which means that you have got 4K 60Hz support. And indeed I said 60Hz because the panel that Sky is using is got a 60Hz panel and of course is running on an Ultra HD resolution. Now as for the panel itself, it's running on quantum dot technology and supports HDR via HDR10, HLG and Dolby Vision content. Speaking of which, let's go on to a little bit of a demo. I'm going to be playing some content via a Blu-ray player. It'll be Transformers Age of Extinctions to be more specific, then playing some YouTube videos which will be from myself reviewing cars on Totally EV.
We are programming this, right?
Yes, mostly.
Systems seem to have malfunctioned.
Targeting 5 bogies. Engaging rockets. Missiles away.
Now the long-range model has a 82 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and here it nets roughly 360 miles on the WLTP standard. Now from my own tests I actually found in mixed driving that the long-range model netted 310 miles, making it one of the longest range EVs specifically for its segment. And then the standard range plus that we have on review today actually got between 230 to 250 miles. Now the long range model has a 82 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and here it nets roughly 360 miles on the WLTP standard. Now from my own tests I actually found in mixed driving that the long range model netted 310 miles, making it one of the longest range EVs specifically for its segment. And then the standard range plus that we have on review today actually got between 230 to 250 miles. So with that little demo, hopefully it gave you an indication of how the panel looks like. And here I was using a physical connection via a Blu-ray player and then streaming via the YouTube app. Truthfully, to get a better idea of how it looks like, I would very much suggest going into a Sky store and actually checking out for yourself and use your own eyes rather than looking through a camera and or through a monitor. Now moving on, we get on to audio, and the reason this is important is because it's got built-in speakers, 6 to be specific, including a subwoofer. Here you've got 3 forward-firing drivers and 2 upward-firing drivers, and therefore it gives you the Dolby Atmos support. Yes, here you can run Dolby Atmos content or indeed non-Dolby Atmos content such as via Dolby Digital or other. Now to give you an indication of how the TV actually sounds like, I'm going to go on to a little sound demo. First off, we're going to be doing a music demo via one of my friend's songs. It's Priya J to be specific, and her song name is called Falling. You can find it down in the description below in case you're interested. And then we're going to be reverting back to Transformers because here I've got Dolby Atmos support via the Blu-ray player, and therefore means we can fully enjoy Dolby Atmos. I'll enable it and disable it and look out for the annotations to give you a little bit of indication of what content is actually being played.
Then learn how to fly. It's the only way I know how to play this game to success. I'm not quite sussed it yet. When I reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always think, and now you always should hide. Then learn how to fly. It's the only
And so yet again, it's not quite ideal to hear a demo over YouTube because it's compressed and indeed is using my microphones. So if you want to take your own ears to a Sky Score, definitely do so and hear for yourself how the TV performs. Now, hopefully this video has been helpful for you guys and has given you a little bit of a deeper dive on Sky Glass. For those people who are intrigued about it and don't have Sky Glass, to customers who actually already have Sky Glass and were wondering what settings to use, I really hope this video has provided everything you need to know and or has answered those questions. Of course, if you are a current Sky Glass customer, I'd be intrigued to hear your own settings down in the comment section below. And of course, if you appreciated the video, definitely do drop a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which are greatly appreciated. Now finally, I'd like to end this video by thanking Sky for supporting the channel, as it's greatly appreciated and it allows me to do the content I love. As such, I've been Totally Dubbed and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.